Oh, I asked you a long way from home.
Yeah.
And you replied,
Well, home was always here, right?
yeah. So no feelings of, I wish I was home back in Australia right now?
No.
Never?
No. Never such a... How do you know, yeah? Next moment it can come.
Yeah. So it reminds me of the Paul Young song, wherever I lay my head, that's my home.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there a lot of truth in music?
Some people have, I mean, it's clear, you know, people have been touched and they express it in all kinds of forms.
Yeah.
So in music and poetry and just in walking and talking and being quiet.
So what was your first encounter with the truth?
That's funny. For me, it was very funny. When I was about 19, kind of by chance, I ended up taking some LSD, and on that, I had no background of drugs, and I wouldn't even call it drugs. I'd call it medicine. On that substance, all the doors opened up, and I had the experience of unconditional love and knowing, yeah. And so that was the first big taste, and it kind of changed the direction of my life.
But the next day after you took LSD, it was still the same?
No, it wasn't.
No.
But what had changed was I'd experienced something that I knew was real, even though it was so-called induced by a substance. The knowing that happened in it, I knew was real, and for me it was like, if this is a possibility to live like this, I want to. And so that's what changed direction for me.
So you went over to the drugstore and asked for a
For
year supply of LSD?
A lifetime supply. Because up to that point I had never heard of teachers, I'd never heard of anything, I didn't know. So yeah, it was unexpected, and it was funny because other people took LSD and they didn't have that experience. They had, they saw some things, but they didn't have that recognition of, I would say, the essential nature of everything. But for me, it was just my luck, and it opened up like that.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And then came Papa G, or what was it, a long period?
Yeah, that was then. What happened for me was I could see that my thinking was distorted, and that I was seeing life through a filter, and I knew that somehow I had to start to recognize what these filters were and come out of it. I knew I had to re-examine every belief, every thought. And I didn't know how, basically, but I just knew. And I also saw my priorities had been all askew. And I knew, that sense of just being and that complete connection with everything. So, but it also set up some interesting confusions, because for years I was looking again for that experience, and so I was always measuring whether I was present by the experience that was going on. And that was one thing. When I met Papaji, he said to me, on the surface of the ocean there are waves. Deep in the ocean it's very quiet. But if you have a preference of one over the other, then you're on the shore. And so it was like, it hit me like wow, okay. So this running after any experience was a mistake, basically. To recognize that in which all experience happens. And that made a subtle but a profound shift for me.
So the seeking stopped.
Then the seeking stopped, yeah.
And how long after that you were inspired to talk to people about this?
Yeah, for me it was a funny way that it progressed, because I had been working with people, doing what I called awareness work. And up to that point, it was clear to me that ultimately all that we have is our attention to give each other, or to, that's the interface. And I could see that the habits of attention, not only where our attention was, but how our attention was focused, determined not only the experience that we had of life, but also how other people felt us. So certain, like if you're looking through a critical habit of attention, the people that are the recipient of that quality of attention, it affects their physicality.
Yeah, feel it.
Yeah, they feel it for sure. And like in families, now we know that certain qualities of attention within the family system can cause someone to be sick or depressed or suicidal. So I was recognizing that the habit of attention that was, going on in the world was not a particularly friendly one, and that it was actually causing a lot of difficulties, not only for who was, like from where the attention was coming, but also for everyone around them, especially to the people most meaningful and that you love the most. So, within the family system, the habits of attention between the parents and the kid can cause huge problems and rifts. And it has nothing to, it's just like a habit, you could say. And because it's unconscious and it's not noticed, it just continues. And then, of course, it sets up all kinds of dynamics. And so I was doing that kind of work, and was reasonably successful at that, and getting well known in newspapers and TV and stuff like that. And
Dr. Phil. The Australian Dr. Phil.
And I wasn't in Australia at that time.
No?
I was living in Hawaii. Yeah,
okay.
Maui, yeah. And then when I met Papaji, I knew that was finished. But, whenever you're traveling like that, you have to hire centers, a year in advance, and people book in and all that stuff. So I still had a few commitments. But when I showed up, I said, look, I can't do what I was doing anymore. And what people said to me was, we've gotten so much value from you over the past. If you found something better, you have to show us. And, for me, I'd just spent 3 weeks in India, and I felt completely unprepared, or I didn't know, I didn't know quite how to communicate what I'd seen being with Papaji. So I felt very insecure about it. But they said, listen, whatever it is, we want to know it. So then I started holding meetings, but
some people maybe got angry or left.
No, it was beautiful. But my plan was to finish off my commitments and go back to India to be with Papaji. And I got there, and as soon as I got there, he took me into his room and he said, you found the diamond. I want you to be available. Oh my God, I thought I could come there and, just drink a little
relax.
Deeper. Yeah, drink a little deeper. And, and then at one point, maybe because I didn't know what it was next. I just knew that what had happened up till then was over.
Yeah, but it wasn't a punishment that he said that to you.
No, but it was funny because, there was such a strong yearning to be available to truth, to this, in a way that was clean, that had nothing added, and that was where I didn't feel I could say really sure of myself, because I could see that there was still a lot of things going on in me that were unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke to Papaji about that, and he said to me, you know where the moon is. You're just a pointer at the moon. And if you look, any finger is crooked. So don't worry about, what's going on, and you just point at the moon, because you've seen, And that was a big relief. Okay, great. So I
no more worries.
I can't say no more worries, but
about that, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, because, it's, that's the paradox of this whole thing. It's like, you know, you can recognize that there's nobody here, that there's awareness here, and that, and yet there are these patterns that are still playing, that show up in how life lives itself, you can say like that. Really, that has nothing to do with you, but still you can watch, you know, the craziness of your system doing its dance.
Yeah.
And
isn't that the biggest mistake the searcher makes, that he thinks he can find a state in which every so-called problem dissolves and only peace all the time?
But and this is the paradox, because at any moment that you just quiet, there is no problem.
Yeah.
Okay. That's you know, it's like time and again people come to the meetings and they're involved in something that's troubling them, and the moment they quieten down, I don't tell them, they tell me, oh, it's no problem. Nothing, here everything is fine. But then usually the comment is, yes, but then when I go home and I say, well, you know, you're talking about the past because you don't know what's going to happen when you go home. But the fact is that for many people, when they do go home, their habits reassert, and then they find themselves in similar difficulties, except that there's a difference, that they know that when there's just a resting with the attention in awareness, there is no problem. Mm-hmm. And you know, that's a luck. That's a deep luck, because for many people, in that recognition, what happens is, it's like Pandora's box has been opened. Everything that has been suppressed starts to come up. Yeah. And in some ways people feel a lot worse than they did before, because what was not visible starts to become visible. But it's just a natural process. It does its thing. And yeah, you know, like, it's interesting, because what happens, it seems, is that for some people there's a way of taking an enlightened perspective at that point, where there's this, you know, some people call it inviting everything away. They say, you know, look, it's not real, you don't have to trouble with it.
You invite a shuffle.
They invite a shuffle, yeah. It's like, okay. So, you know, it's okay, but in a sense, what happens is those patterns keep troubling. And so there are some recognition, some seeings that make that easier. And one of them is the truly investigating and seeing, okay, there's patterns going on, and these patterns are happening, and then really questioning deeply who's doing them all, you know, who's responsible for them, because usually the idea is, you know, I'm responsible for it, it's me. Yeah. Because those patterns show up as a sense of me. They are the sense of me.
It's who I am.
Yeah, and or it produces the sense of separation, the sense of identity. Yeah. But nobody's doing it. So when life is looking through those patterns, it feels like there's a me that's doing it. But when you really start to look and see, okay, where did these patterns come from? Look, they come from conditioning. Where did that conditioning come from? Maybe people say my parents, my culture. Okay, but where did that come from? Yeah. And then you start going back. You see, well, we don't know. So who's responsible?
No one to blame.
No one to blame. So that's a very critical thing, because what happens is when, you know, we're living our life, and then somehow something touches us, and there's some sense that everything isn't okay. It's like, that's the feeling, yeah? I'm not okay, the world's not okay, life's not okay. Somehow something touches us, and there's some sense that everything isn't okay. It's like, that's the feeling, yeah? I'm not okay, the world's not okay, life's not okay.
Missing out on something.
Yes, either missing out or there's an upset, you know, because you could say one of the basic ways that people feel out of tune with what is what we call an upset. Upset with time, upset with matter, upset with people, upset with life, upset with your looks, upset with each other, something like that. So there's some kind of an upset. And from the perspective of that upset, it feels and looks like there's somebody here who is upset.
Yeah.
Whereas actually upset is just happening. And when it appears that there's somebody that's upset, the tendency is towards blame, shame, and guilt, which just adds another layer which makes it very difficult to see what's going on. So this being able to see actually that the upset just happened, nobody did it,
Yeah.
and that even though it feels very personal and real, it's like what we keep seeing in the meetings is, you know, someone says, oh, I have this going on, and I say, how many people here know it? And everybody raises their hands, or almost everybody. And then you can see it's not personal, it's just something that goes on in all of us. Okay, great, then let's see if we can, you know, investigate it or see what it is. And then people can start to see the mechanics of it and how it functions. But as soon as blame, shame, or guilt kicks in, you know, you've got another layer that makes it very difficult to penetrate what's going on. So, you know, one way is this way of that, of just bringing your attention back to awareness and resting. Okay, then there's no upset there at all in that. But another is that there's this investigation of what it is. And in that investigation then, these mechanisms can only function unconsciously. Like nobody would trouble themselves consciously. You know, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, let me see how much I can suffer today. And
let's make it a bad day.
Yeah, let's make it a bad day. And not only make it bad for myself,
Yeah.
but everyone
Yeah,
around me,
of course.
especially the people I love the most, you know.
Yeah.
But that's how we actually live, you could say. So
Could you say, it reminds me of a thing Osho said, in misery you are, in happiness you are not.
mm-hmm. Yeah, nice way to say
Yeah,
it.
so claiming misery, or making misery your own, gives you a sense of being
self.
someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in happiness, you dissolve. You
Yeah.
just be what it is.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is that, I mean, if you look at our conditioning, I mean, as the Dutch conditioning is not that it's okay to be really ecstatic and happy.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
In most cultures I've been to, it's not
Yeah.
invited. It's not even considered to be a possibility. Maybe you'll be happy one day, you know, when you retire or later, but much later. Now is, you know, it's not. But bottom line, we only have this moment. It's this moment.
Tomorrow never comes.
And yeah, and then the thing is, because we know this, okay, what you said is profound actually. But then how does it come out of being just a you know, I could say a mental recognition into being physical, into being somatic, into being, so in this moment here, you know, we perceive the world through 5 senses: seeing, smelling, hearing, tasting, touch. And I mean, something very simple. In most of us, there's been a habit of when we wake up in the morning, one of the first thoughts we have is, what do I need to do today? And so just that thought is enough for us to tighten up, contract.
Yeah.
And when I speak about this, almost everybody nods and goes, yes, we know this very well in our own life. But here's what's interesting to look at. The moment we tighten up a little bit, and when I say we tighten up, our body just tightens up. That thought comes, we didn't ask for it, it just comes, and our system tightens up. And the moment it tightens up, the feeling is one of pressure. Like, you know, life isn't fun anymore. It's like, there's a pressure. And basically there's not enough time. So there's an upset with time happening already. And so instead of just here and this, you know, eternity, and it's all happening here in this moment, there's this feeling of needing to rush. So what happens with our attention is interesting to track. Because the moment that we feel tightened up, there's a feeling of starting to run, needing to keep it together. And so in that organization, the feeling is that there's a problem. everything isn't quite okay. It's not radically, for some people it's, like there's a, especially if like if there's been difficulty in managing the physical world, then it goes into depression or other things. But otherwise it's this feeling of tension, like fight flight, you could say, has been activated. So what happens is this now is not actually that pleasant anymore.
Need to get somewhere.
Need to get somewhere else, need to, do something. So our attention actually focuses towards the future. And so what happens is, the moment that happens, and you spoke about it, is like when we're happy there's nobody there, and when there's some sense of contraction there's somebody there. So the moment that happens, there's a sense that life is a problem, and our thinking, which is a problem-solving capacity, kicks in, tries to help us, trying to solve it. So what it'll do, it'll look around and it'll find out what the problem is. That's what it does. And the big problems for human beings are love, security, and survival. So it'll look around and say, look, there's something wrong with my relationship, there's something wrong with the amount of money I have, or my health, or something, and it'll fixate on a problem.
Yeah.
And whatever the problem is, we don't want it, which means we have it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what it'll do is it'll look for a solution. And then whatever the solution is, we want it, which means we don't have it. Okay, so now we have everything we don't want, and we don't have everything we do want. That's why it's called suffering.
We don't have everything we do want, and we do have everything we don't want.
Yes, exactly. And so what happens is, now the only chance of happiness is when we get where our mind tells us happiness is. So now our happiness is tied to a relationship, to amount of money, to the way we look, or to something.
Yeah.
And so our whole intelligence organizes to try and get there. So now at this point it's become, it's something to live through so that we can get to where we think happiness is.
Struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So life becomes a struggle.
Yeah.
And in that way of functioning, everybody becomes a means to an end. Someone is either helping you get where you think you're going, or okay. So when you get 6 billion people that are functioning that way, how does it function on this planet?
People try to take advantage of each other.
People try to take advantage of each other. There's just this ongoing, way of So in that organization, how do we relate to nature?
Yeah.
It's something just to be used to get what we need to be happy.
Yeah.
It's not something to be honored and enjoyed. Yeah. So as soon as that organization is going, you could say there's a participation in living that's not in tune, or that's in tune, in a funny kind of a way, put it that way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and if it's going on and we don't recognize it, we can read the newspapers and we can see that there's a problem, but there's a disassociation from it. We don't see how we're involved. We don't see, how our systems are organized that's showing up as that reality.
But it's also the capitalistic system which
it's everything,
which embraces it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is never enough. You have to get this, and that to be happy.
To be happy, yeah. And so
nowhere there's a billboard which says,
"This is okay. This is it. This is it. This is it. This is
enjoy.
As hard as it gets. Yeah. Enjoy, yeah." So then the question is, how do we actually enjoy? How do we enjoy this moment with every single cell in our bodies, including every single cell? It's like, because in fact, our body is also an experience to us. This is what's weird, it's like this moment, what we call the world, what we call everything, time, space, is actually just an experience to us, not more.
Nothing we own.
No, because experience, the nature of experiences is changing every second. You can't
it comes and goes.
Yeah, it comes and goes. But just consider this for a moment. Everything, including each other, is actually an experience to us. Including our own bodies. We don't usually see it this way. But everything, the experience of now, we say, is appearing in awareness. So this body This moment, everything is appearing in awareness, and it's all an experience, not more. And that experience is appearing here now. So then what is enjoying, or how does enjoying happen? It's like, is it the experience that's enjoyable, or is it the way we relate to it that makes it enjoyable? Because a lot of times there's a confusion around that. Yeah, there's this idea that something is enjoyable, but when you look a little deeper, you can see actually it's never the thing that's enjoyable. It's the relation. It's like how we relate to it. Yeah.
I sometimes give the example when talking to people, when you come to a party. Some people come to the party and they say, "Okay, now make me happy or give me enjoyment." But it's coming to the party that you don't get something out of it. You come to the party, and then party is an experience. Yeah, it how do you call it? It appears.
Yeah.
So that's out of the party.
So that's the question. So here we are, and there's an interest. I mean, I've never met anybody who wants to suffer, and yet most people end up. So how do we, in this moment, or what are the factors involved in this moment to enjoy the totality of this moment? I mean, we can, maybe we can look at a flower and say, "Wow, that's beautiful." Or whatever sex we're into, you look and go, "Wow, that's cute," or something. But what is it that starts to bring that? I like to call it drinking in the whole universe, like really receiving the whole universe as an experience. But it's like when you're drinking it in. If you go into nature or some spot, and there's a way in which the mind gets still, and there's a drinking in, but there's another flow, I could say, that of where you're not only drinking in, but there's a way of kind of giving back. Like if you're stroking a cat, and then there's a way that the cat kind of leans into the stroking, yeah? or if somebody is kissing you, and it's somebody that you want to kiss you, and they're kissing you when you want to be kissed, and how you want to be kissed, and where you want to be kissed. All those factors are there. And so you're enjoying, this is cool. And then there's something that happens when you start kissing back, yeah? Or, it's like something changes in the flow. It's like it's moving. So this not only drinking in the universe, but giving back, or kissing back, or
dance.
Yeah, dancing. It's like, so how do we find that in this moment with the whole universe? Just this being caressed by, like the Sufis would call it the beloved, yeah? Or because again, there's this. If you look at the history of Advaita, there's been lots of subtleties in the different people that have been into it over the thousands of years that it's been in existence. And they're quite profound subtleties, about, okay, there's nobody here. That's one
main message.
You could say. But then the other message is, like Nisargadatta put it so beautifully to my ears anyway. And he said, when I know there's nobody here, or there's nothing, that's wisdom. When I know I'm everything, that's love. Yeah. And between those, my life flows. And it's like this awareness which is beyond the whole game. It's not concerned with happiness, with anything. It's not
all embracing,
and yet not concerned with any experience. This lifetime is a blip on the screen. It's not concerned. And then and the paradox that all we have is this experience of now. All we have is this experience of now. That's it. We don't have more. And so this, like this being the capacity to start to truly enjoy this experience. Yeah? That then I would say there's a way of meeting life in a way that's beautiful. That there's a felt sense of, like,
it's okay.
yeah, even more than okay,
Yeah.
of beauty, of
Yeah.
ecstasy, yeah, just
Or what Byron Katie says, loving what is.
loving what is,
Yeah.
yeah. Not arguing with what is, yeah.
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 But it's then all the critics say it's nice to say if you're sitting in a beautiful room with a pot of tea, but when
Yeah.
this house is on fire and people at the street are throwing rocks at you, can you still love what is?
Yeah, yeah. And what's interesting in that is like that, you know, like when tsunamis hit or earthquakes, very often people have profound shifts in the way they function. You know, it's like suddenly a piece of bread, there's so much gratefulness, and people can start meeting each other and be kind to each other, and, you know, being grateful for the next breath, you could say.
Yeah, surrender.
Yeah, something can happen. So it's not dependent on circumstance. You know, that's the thing. It's very often when circumstances are good, they get kind of jaded. They get kind of into, look, I'm still not happy, but at least I'm not, you know, at least I have food to eat. But it's not a true happiness. You know, still, as long as that habit to tighten up in the morning happens, life is not happy. You know, you can have billions, and that's going on. You know, the system's still in fight-flight. It's still in a separation-based organization.
It's that nice feeling when you just woke up but you haven't remembered who
Yeah.
or what you are. You have
yeah.
this, you touch the how do you call it, deck bed. You just, everything feels so wonderful.
Mm.
And then your feet hit the floor and
The mind
the machine starts up.
starts up, yeah.
But then the question always everybody asks is, what can I do to prevent that from happening? That machine starting up.
Yeah, I mean, just to talk about how my life moved was, you know, after meeting Papaji, there was this recognition of that awareness is that in which everything appears. And still many patterns were playing. And I was walking on the beach in Byron with, you know, dolphins in the water and beautiful sunny day, gorgeous beach. And I could feel my system was stressed. The capacity to really enjoy it wasn't there. And it was, wow, that's amazing, eh? You know, having fortunate circumstances, belly full, lovely place to live, everybody in my life was healthy, and you know, there was no problems.
But still no.
And yet, you know, the system was in a habit of being stressed. Even when there wasn't much to do. Still, it always felt this underlying sense of, and I went, wow, that's interesting. I wonder how I never saw that before. And so it became interesting to me to see how it functioned, what was involved. And I noticed that, you know, waking up would happen, and there'd be this moment of, and then this thought, what do I need to do today? And then this feeling of, like I need to run to stay on top of things, to keep my ducks in a row, you know. And I could see this was like my personality was very much like type A, doing personality, always
achieving,
running. I would just say like that. And so then it started to become interesting to me to watch and see. I could see that, because then I thought, okay, well, I can see it now. I'm just going to not give in to it. And it was amazing. It was so strong in me. It felt like if I didn't get up, I was going to die. You know, if I didn't get up and start running, because it was like, I could see how much it was tied to survival.
Yeah.
And then I would check in, look, will I actually not survive if I just rest, yeah? And I could see, no, it was just a program running in the background, so to speak. So as I started noticing it and exploring it, over some time, it quietened down. I mean, hugely. So much so, my kids recognized, wow, Dad, you're not nearly as uptight as you used to be. And
but it's not something you chose.
No, and but in the seeing of it, you see, even the seeing happened kind of by itself. It was like this walking along the beach, and then there's recognition. Okay, wait, but you know, what's happening there? There's something going on in at a level where there's nobody doing it. It's clear. It's just a program. It's just like it's running in the background, and it's really it consumes a lot of energy, a lot of life energy, and it keeps a certain focus and a certain sense of life alive that's not fun. Yeah, and so for me that was, you know, like a huge shift. And then what became interesting was, you know, it's this recognition that, like our primary senses, seeing, smelling, tasting and hearing, are all in our head, yeah? And then our thinking, even though actually a lot of thinking happens also, now we know it happens in the heart and also in the solar plexus. You know, we know I have a gut feeling, or I know in my heart, yeah? So, I mean, the whole system, but a lot of this worried thinking happens mostly, it feels like in our heads. So there's a way that we're very used to having our attention primarily in our head and not through our whole bodies.
Isn't this just a leftover from the times where we had to be worried that a lion would kill us when we went out for food, or?
And yet, you know, it's like if you look at martial artists who, you know, like they're resting in with their attention fully in their body, they can feel like there's a way of sensing with the whole body that's not stress-based.
Yeah.
You know, this because, you know, in terms of like martial arts or like a samurai tradition, if you're stressed and you go onto the battlefield,
it won't last 5 minutes.
No, you know, that's why this thing of not a good, you know, it's a good day to die, because if you're not just present with no thought, not even I want to live, or, you know, I want to hit first, or any of those, and there's a hole in your chi, there's a hole in, you know, your energy. So, you know, they in that recognition, you could say there was an exploration of just being aware with every cell. So, and that's not our conditioning. Our conditioning is mostly you know, if you look at people energetically, most of the energy is in the head.
Yeah.
And so it's just head meeting head, and, you know, it's like the rest is left out. And so, in that recognition, the attention starts to include the experience that we call the body, and then something else starts to, you know, then there's a way in which that fear-based, that thinking-based way of meeting life starts to relax, and it, you know, then of course it changes perception. Because, I mean, I play with this a lot. It's like at one point I was it actually was in Amsterdam here. It's like I always thought I received the information of what was going on through my senses. That was the way, in the paradigm I'd grown up in. And then it happened that at the last minute the venue that we'd rented fell through, and so I found myself coming to Amsterdam. In those days there were 250, maybe 300 people coming to the meetings. And at the last minute we were offered a rave club in the red light district for the meetings, which was very kind of those guys to offer it. And the interesting part of it was that the only lighting in the place was this ultraviolet, so all I could see of people was their teeth and white t-shirts. And it was a rave club, so they was used to having this really loud music. So when you turned the air conditioning on, it was so loud, and you know, the place was jam-packed. There was people with shoulder to shoulder. There was no room. So we were using microphones because there was no room for people to come in front even. It was too packed. You couldn't come through easy. So when people were speaking, I couldn't, you know, the sound was coming through the loudspeakers, so I couldn't even see who I was talking to. And so, you know, it was, and I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting, you know, how to but I found that actually I knew, I could feel what was happening inside of people, inside of me.
Without hearing all of the words.
With just in me, it was like,
yeah.
You know, so then, you know, as I was like playing with it, I saw, okay, look, if you really look at it, seeing happens, but it doesn't happen outside. You know, it happens, and same with hearing. And then I started looking, okay, the experience of this moment, it's all an experience, and it's not happening outside. That's, you know, the brain kind of projects it. Where actual experience is happening is, where does it actually happen? You know, when you look at it, you can't actually find a place, but if you keep playing with it, you see it's happening in consciousness or awareness, whichever word you want to use for that. And that's not anywhere. It's not dependent, you know, it's not outside. And so it's like there was a shift that, you know, because part of the thing is we've been conditioned with language, you know, to see everything as objects and not to recognize it's all an experience.
Yeah.
So in that habit of objectifying, it looks like you there and I'm here. But experientially, I'm an experience to you. And that experience happens in you, not in anywhere else, only in you. So in that recognition, it changes something. It's just like, you know, the habit might still be towards object consciousness. You know, okay, but we play with it sometimes in the meetings, just like, you know, just to explore the difference between looking out to see and having your eyes be holes and just letting the light come in. So when you just, it's interesting, you know, like babies, they haven't learned this thing of looking out yet. And sometimes you look into a small baby's eyes and it feels like you can look right into them, yeah? So when we just play for a moment, and what happens if you just let the light come in and you're not looking to see? It changes something. It's a different perspective of the moment. And so, you know, what if we stop projecting outside? Because outside is always referential to the body, yeah? The outside of the body. And so when experience is just happening here, then where does it begin and end? Then it's like, you know, suddenly there's this experience of, wait, it's all, you know, there's no separation. And experiential, not just conceptual. So.
Nice. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, yeah, cool.